If there's one rule I wish more people followed, was to write texts or email messages like a future judge or magistrate is watching them. Because you never know. It could be all fun and emojis right now, and then one day it ends up like an exhibit in court. Of course, context is everything. Under the Evidence Act of Kenya, email messages, text messages are all considered part of electronic record, which are admissible in court as evidence in respect to any particular matter or any particular transaction. So if I were you, I'd be very careful in terms of whatever I write down. Could be to a friend, to a loved one, could be your parent, could be your sister, could be your brother, could be your wife, you name it. Be very careful with what you put down in writing, because something might be taken out of context, could be interpreted differently, in as much as you perhaps had different intentions. I'd be very careful in how I write my texts or email messages. A simple message to your wife or to your husband, something like, "Hi babe, I'll sort you out next week." Before you know it, there's a dispute between yourself and your spouse, and you find these text messages you've been sharing privately between yourselves are being used against you in a court of law, in a maintenance suit. Essentially, the court will want to get the context. You send these messages agreeing to make certain payments in regards to either taking care of the spouse or the children of the marriage. But right now, perhaps maybe current circumstances, you're claiming that maybe you've never provided for the children and that you're fully dependent on the other spouse. And then this text message is pulled out before court, showing that you had sent so many text messages before, promising to make payments. And indeed, you followed up by making those payments. So now you'd have a very tall order in terms of convincing the court otherwise, like you're unable to provide for the children. Of course, there's something called an affidavit of means, which are normally prepared. But again, these affidavits of means can be challenged in court, and such like evidence in the form of a text message where you are agreeing to make certain payments and you are following up those promises to pay with actual action, following it up with actual payments being made to your spouse, then you're going to have a very difficult time in terms of proving otherwise, that you're unable to provide for your family or your children or your better half. So be very careful. Write your text messages very carefully. Always remember, it could land before a court of law. Another example is just a message between a service provider, maybe someone selling fridges or someone selling TVs, and they send a simple text message. "Hey, send me the money so that I can have the TV or the fridge delivered to you." Then once the same is delivered and it turns out to be faulty, and the service provider decides now to jump ship and start claiming things like maybe he never delivered or stuff like that. But there's a text message confirming that he agreed to deliver certain items to you, which could be a fridge or could be that TV, that he or she is now trying to disown, maybe because of the mechanical issues that have arisen. You bought the TV, you bought the fridge, and it turns out to be faulty. You go back to the service provider, you start asking for a refund, but they start taking you around in circles. Those email exchanges or those text messages that were shared between yourselves actually can be very useful for you in a court of law, just to show you that there was some sort of contractual obligations between the two of you. Court will want to look at the elements of a contract. Was there an offer? Yes, there was an offer. He offered via text to deliver a TV or the fridge. Was there an acceptance of the offer? Yes, there was an acceptance. You wrote back to them agreeing to take delivery of the TV or the fridge. Then the court will ask, was there consideration? Yes, there was consideration because you paid. You actually paid for that TV or fridge before it was delivered to you. Was there an intention to create legally binding obligations? Yes, there was intention to create legally binding obligations. You're buying a TV in the hope that it is going to function properly. But you bought it and it turns out to be faulty. You call back the service provider and they start taking you around in circles. You have every right in law to go after that service provider, either to provide you a refund or even go a step further and claim for damages. So that text message or those email exchanges that you had are going to be quite useful for you in a court of law, just to try and establish where this relationship arose from. Another example is Some people usually like sending threats via text or even email, threatening someone or hurling insults at someone. Very risky. Assuming you, just out of anger, you text someone and tell them, hey, don't play with me. I know where you stay. Imagine that is the last text someone receives, and then the following day they turn up dead. It could be that you had nothing to do with that death, but the police are going to look at the phone and they see the last text that the deceased person received was a text message from you along the lines that was sent in anger. Hey, don't play with me, I know where you live. And then now he's dead. Definitely you're going to be the first suspect in that case, in as much as you are innocent. So be very careful in the type of messages or emails you're going to exchange between yourselves, because you never know where that text message or that email message is going to land. If it ends up in court, for instance, the last example I've given, you're going to have a very difficult time convincing the magistrate or convincing the prosecution that you have nothing to do with that murder, that the unfortunate murder that has happened. So be very careful. So always use this as a rule of thumb. If you'd be very embarrassed if you hear that text or email message being read out to you in a public forum or even in a court of law, don't send that text, don't send that email. If you'd feel embarrassed if it's going to be read to a loved one, then probably it's an offending text or it's an offending message. Don't send it. If you're going to be embarrassed if the text or email message is going to be printed out for court, don't send it. It's all about optics. Remember, the judge or the magistrate was not there when you're sending that message, so they might interpret it differently. Of course, they're going to interpret it in line with current laws and regulations, but they were not there. They can't read your mind. So be very careful in terms of how you frame your messages, email messages or text messages that you share between your friends, loved ones, colleagues, and so on and so forth. Be very careful. They're all admissible as evidence in a court of law. Always write like a judge is watching. Always write like a magistrate is watching. You might think that you can write the message and delete it. Yes, you'll delete it on your end, or you'll send a disappearing message, but you don't know what the other party is doing. Yes, you cannot take a screenshot of a disappearing message, but they decide to take a picture of it. Or before you delete the message, they take a screenshot of it. You don't know what has happened before that. So you don't just assume because you've deleted the message, then it has also disappeared on the other end, or the other party has not taken a screenshot or a picture with another phone from it. Be very careful. So if you are on the good side of things, by good side of things, I mean that if a text message is favorable to you, and maybe for the example of a service provider who delivers certain items and which later turned out to be faulty and you wish to go against them, and you're unsure how to go about it, feel free to reach out to us, book a consultation, and then we can analyze and provide a comprehensive legal analysis of your case and the options that are available for you.